Nowadays, it's easier than ever to build your own logo or make your own website. However, it doesn't work all of the time. One of the most overlooked elements are colours and fonts. Colours and fonts, they need to be consistent, yet interesting, minimal, yet powerful, and it's hard to get this balance right. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly the principles that I use when designing a website or making a logo in order to help you make your brand not only look good, but feel right. How can you decide on the colours? Well, you need to think about how certain colours come across. And now this is known as colour psychology. Different perceptions of colour are also different between cultures as well. So you have to think about your target audience and how they might perceive your colours. Now, my target audience is in the UK, so I'm going to talk about it from a Western perspective, how people over here would view certain colours. So, for example, red is seen as bold, warning, attention, energetic, excitement, all of those, whereas green is more nature, friendliness, calming. There are whole different perceptions for a whole different range of colours, and you need to do a bit more research. Look into the colours that you think and how that. Place to start is to pick one main colour that best represents your brand. Look at a few different examples of this. So, Coca-Cola. Now, they use red because they want to be come across as exciting. They want you to be excited when you drink their product. Now, another example you can see a lot in energy companies. There's a trend in energy companies to introduce more green into their branding. That's because green is seen as natural, eco-friendly. That's how they want to come across. And that's what you need to do for your brand. Pick one colour that you want to best represent how you come across. Are you unsure on which colour can best fit your brand? Well, just do a bit more research. Look into specific colour psychologies and different perceptions, and then pick one that you think best represents your company and your values. So now you've picked your main colour, the next idea is to pick an accent colour, or one or two accent colours, that compare with your main colour. Now, colour contrast is how well two colours can easily be seen or read when they are next to or on top of each other. So, as seen, just discussed now, red and white matches well, contrast well. However, colours like black and grey, similar colours, they wouldn't contrast very well. You can quickly tell which colours contrast well with each other by searching for a colour wheel. Make sure to search for an RGB colour wheel that's used for light instead of RYB, which is used for paints and pigments. Now, the colours that are closest to each other on the colour wheel, they're the ones that contrast the least because they're the ones most similar. However, the ones directly opposite each other are the ones that contrast very well, as they are almost the least similar to each other. Now, be careful of choosing two colours that are directly opposite each other because this can be bright and very distracting, unless you want your brand to appear bright. Other traps to fall into is choosing two primary colours like red and green, or green and blue, or red and blue, because they can also appear distracting when placed next to each other. When choosing colours that contrast each other, it's probably best practice to choose ones that are far apart on the colour wheel, yet not directly opposite, or perhaps a toned down shade of the opposite colours, just so it doesn't appear too distracting. So, an example of all of this regarding colour coming together, I'd like to use my own brand as an example. So for my main colour, I chose gold because I wanted to appear elegant and with a little bit of class. And yet for my accent colour, I chose black because they contrast well, and I also chose white as well. Now, black and white all can appear simple, minimalist, and that's how exactly I want to appear. Minimalist with a bit of class and elegance. Um, I plan to use white and black on the main body and text, and then gold logos, headings, important bits to really appear how I want to appear, minimalist yet elegant at the same time. Fonts are also a key part of branding. Now, many people that design their own fonts don't realise the hidden messages that they convey and see them merely as just something that's decorative or just an added feature that you add on. However, I want to show you how to select the best fonts. Now, usually, designers will select two fonts. One that's used for headings, logos, or key text that you want to instantly draw attention to. And then the second font is used for main text or body text. Now, there are two different types of fonts as well. Serif and sans serif. Serif have little lines or little strokes at the end of each letter, and those lines are called serifs. And they're the ones that are usually, although not always, the ones used for the headings and the key text. Sans serif are the ones without those lines, and they're the ones usually, although again not always, used for the main body. Now, an example, Times New Roman, that's a serif font, Calibri a sans serif font. Another element you have to consider when choosing fonts is their history and some other common usages and why they were designed. So let's have a look at some examples of a few different fonts. So the first one we're going to look at, Gill Sans. So Gill Sans was designed with railway inscriptions in mind, and it was the standard font used for British Wales upgrades between 1948 and in the 1960s until it gradually began to be replaced. Now, this means that companies will often use Gill Sans when they want to appear with heritage and yet British at the same time. So, heritage railway companies and the BBC use Gill Sans for a bit. That's one example of how font usage and their examples and their history come into font design as well. Another example is the Cloister Black font. Now, this is used when designers want to create a feeling of historicness or fantasy because this font looks like how people wrote in the medieval era. So there's this link there. Although it's not very readable, so it's only used for headings and key text. So I'd like to use my brand as an example of it all coming together. So I chose Sincil Decorative, that's my serif font, that's one I use for headings and key text, and Montserrat as my main text and my body text. Now, Sincil Decorative, it was designed based on Roman inscriptions, and it appears to be Shakespearean, so that reflects my brand name well. And it appears with a little bit of elegance as well, so that suits me. And then Montserrat, that's the sans serif font. That's modern, readable, clean, very well, works very well on screens, and that's how I want to appear as a designer. I wanted my work to appear well on screens and yet have elegance at the same time. So as seen, colours and fonts are two key elements in branding. Now, the best manner to select your colours is to pick one colour that best represents your brand, considering colour psychology, and then picking two colours or one or two colours that contrast well with this, also considering colour psychology when selecting these colours. And now also many designers will pick two fonts, one that's used for headings and key text that you instantly want to draw to, and main text and body text, one that's modern, simple and readable. So make sure you research a font's history, common uses, examples to make sure that it best represents your brand. So if you found this helpful, or if you are interested in having your brand designed by me, just comment SWCS branding in below or get in contact with the phone number in the description. But thank you for watching this video.